And we're back with a whole new year's worth of rescue rundowns with the Central Oklahoma Humane Society. I'm Dave Morris, joined by the president and CEO of Central Oklahoma Humane Society, Susana, Della, Maddalena. Great to see you again.
You too.
And we're also joined by this lady, Michelle Sherman. You are the intake program manager at Central Oklahoma Humane Society. Great to meet you.
Thank you so much.
Who's our guest?
His name is Osiris. He's a 3-year-old Great Dane.
Well, you told me last week when we were setting up this that you were bringing in an animal. And then this walks in.
A small elephant.
A small elephant. You bring in Scooby-Doo right here. All right, what do we know about Osiris?
Well, Osiris is deaf, and you would not know. Most people would not know by looking at him. But
Beautiful dog.
What we see often in white dogs is deafness and sometimes blindness, and certain breeds are more prevalent with those characteristics.
You gave me a list of breeds, and to me, all the facts you provided me in advance of this are very interesting things that we can go through. But some of the breeds of dogs, there's quite a large list.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Australian Shepherds, Boxers, Great Danes, really quite a long list.
Kind of goes across the board, doesn't it? Cocker Spaniels, Dalmatians, Malteses, Poodles, some of them.
Yeah.
But they all have a similar characteristics of being white.
Yes, actually, there's what makes the pigmentation in a dog actually creates the cells that create hearing as well. So a dog that's lacking pigmentation is also going to lack potentially those hearing cells. He's not completely. He does have some pigmentation. He's got a spot and he's got some black on his nose, and he is not blind. Some dogs are also blind with this when they're born with these characteristics.
Michelle, Osiris is actually your dog, right?
Yes, yeah. Adopted him 3 years ago.
Okay, I was about to say, how long have you had him?
Since he was a puppy.
And there are some upsides to having a deaf dog.
Absolutely. My favorite thing is when I get home, he's not right there trying to barge on me when I get in the door. He's actually completely asleep. I have to go wake him up, and then he gets excited, and then we can go outside.
You also mentioned like 4th of July activities.
Absolutely. So we took him out to fireworks this last 4th of July. He's completely unaffected by him.
All right, tell me about your position at the Central Oklahoma Humane Society. What do you do there?
Sure, I'm the intake program manager, so I see every single animal that comes into our programs. We pull almost all of our animals from the Oklahoma City Animal Shelter.
And is that how you came across Osiris?
He is a rescue dog, yep, absolutely.
Okay, so what do you see every day?
We see a lot of animals that come in as strays, oftentimes because they're not spayed or neutered or they don't have any form of identification on them. They come into the shelter as strays, they're not reclaimed, and that's how we get them into our programs.
Gotcha. So if someone is looking for a specific dog, Michelle's our person to talk with, or cat for that matter, I guess.
Definitely, yep.
All right, now the characteristics we're talking about in the dogs with the pigmentation being white, perhaps blue eyes, does that translate into other animals such as cats maybe?
Absolutely, you can see it in cats. It's not as common in cats as it is in dogs, but you do often see white cats with blue eyes that are deaf.
Amazing. Okay, let's talk about Osiris and deaf dogs. What are their capabilities? Are they trainable?
Absolutely. A lot of our training for our hearing dogs includes hand signals as well.
I see you doing that a lot, and he seems very responsive.
Absolutely. So I trained him with hand signals from the get-go. The very first one he learned was actually no. As a puppy, we used it a lot.
All right, so they're very trainable. They're unfazed by the sounds. Speaking of sounds, can they talk? Can they bark?
Absolutely. He doesn't bark very often. That's just a Dane trait in general, but he will bark when he wants to play and engage with other dogs.
And that's typically how dogs talk, is barking.
Yep.
I mean, what is barking? What is meowing? Is it their form of communication, or is it just attention?
It could be either or. A lot of their communication is actually done via body signal, which is why being deaf isn't necessarily a deficit to them, because they can read each other's body language.
Yeah, they also really have heightened, because they don't have the hearing, their other senses are really heightened. So smell, vision, he's very sensitive to touch. So that all is good stuff when it comes to training. Yeah.
Any danger of taking him to a dog park? Any other maybe considerations if you were to take a deaf animal to a dog park?
I mean, if he wasn't fully trained and he didn't have a good recall, that could be problematic. But one of the second signals he learned was actually the come command. So we could be at the dog park and I'll do a big come and he'll come running back for me. Or if he's close by, I can do a smaller come and he'll come towards me as well.
That's interesting, the recall thing. How would you train a dog to?
We'd do it on leash first. So with the leash on, if he's not paying attention to me, I can give a little tug, and then with the signal, and then when he comes to me, it's positive reinforcement, so petting, attention, or treats.
It's a lot of the same thing that you do. I just took my puppy through basic obedience training, and you're using a lot of the same techniques. We tend to use our hands when we train dogs in general, and so with a deaf dog, they're just relying on your hand signals, or if you're on a leash, some of it comes from the leash. But it's the same, basically the same thing. Yeah.
There you're seeing the full beauty of this animal right here. We've lost Michelle. How often do you guys see deaf animals come through?
We get them from time to time.
Yeah,
right?
it's not terribly common, which is good. We don't want to see a whole lot of deaf dogs, but I mean, we definitely see at least a few a year.
And I guess we should say that some of this is brought on perhaps by some bad breeding, and you guys generally frown upon such things.
Yeah, I mean, I think that if you look at the puppy mill world, where you have breeders that are looking for quantity and not quality, they're not necessarily going to be looking at the pairs that they're breeding and the results of the breeding. And so, if they're getting deaf or deaf and blind puppies, they're not going to care. They're probably just going to get rid of them and keep breeding.
You guys mentioned this to me. You can actually create a deaf animal. What's that combination of ingredients, if you will?
Sure. So the Merle gene is the one that's generally responsible for the deafness, blindness, and/or neurological disorders. So when you breed a dog, or two dogs that carry the Merle gene, whether they're dominant or recessive, so whether they're showing or not, you have a 1 in 4 chance of creating a dog like him.
Wow. All right. Finally, any advice if someone has a deaf animal or is considering a deaf animal to adopt?
Well, we would tell adopters that there is no difference in terms of. I mean, there are some differences. Now he's going to sit on my lap. Okay. But they're great dogs, and they shouldn't be afraid of taking a deaf dog. They're going to have to commit to training, which honestly we recommend for anyone who's taking a puppy, because basic obedience training is just going to make them better to live with, easier to live with. But they're great dogs, and you shouldn't be afraid of a deaf dog. And you can see he's sitting on my lap.
A lap dog.
That's awesome. There you have it, episode 66 of the Rescue Rundown. You can find more of these on newsok.com and their website, okhumane.org. We should also mention that you can find more cats and dogs available for adoption at 7500 Northwestern. You can go see that in person. Go see Michelle, see what she has there, or online. They're available for viewing there at okhumane.org as well. Michelle, great to meet you.
Thank you.
Susana, thanks again for joining us.
You're welcome. And thank you, Osiris.
Absolutely.